Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Frontrunner Talk hosted by the Modane India. It's an initiative that is working to deepen the India-Norway bond. And I'm Anindya Upadhyay, your host for today, a renewable energy expert working in India in the international nonprofit sector. We are delighted to have with us Mr. Erik Solheim. He needs no introduction. He's the former executive director of the UN Environment Programme, and he has also been the Norwegian Minister of Development and Minister of the Environment, and a prominent voice in environment and climate change debates of the world. Welcome to this discussion, Mr. Solheim.
Thank you so much. I'm so much looking forward to discussing these incredibly important issues with you.
Yes, and there is so much that India wants to do on climate change. Norway and India have announced many kind of agreements and many partnerships and cooperation on climate change and environment. There's a lot that maybe India can learn from Norway on this. And I think it's really wonderful to have you to answer some of those questions on how India can further its climate change efforts. So I have the first question for you. So the world has entered 2020 with warnings that countries are not doing enough to cap global temperature rise below the targeted 2 degrees Celsius rise by century end. And we've also had warnings by climate change watchers that pledges under the Paris Agreement are partially or totally insufficient to even halve greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. So, of course, the simple answer to those questions is to raise the pledges. But we do want to understand from you what are the challenges countries face in raising their climate pledges from this point on.
Let's start with what are not the challenges. The challenge is not money. There is abundance of money in the world and a huge amount of investors who are really eager to move into the green sectors and put big money into it. And the challenge is not technology. We have all the technologies we need for the green transformation. I mean, true, we want to improve them. They will be better. I mean, an electric vehicle, which today can make 3 or 4 or even 500 kilometers in one charge, will be able to make 1,000 or 2,000 in the future. For sure, we'll see huge improvements. But we have all the technologies we need. What's missing is the politics. In two ways. We need brave political leaders who really want to change the world and not just to be modest and comfortable with the past. And very many political leaders are also so old-fashioned in the thinking that they don't see the huge opportunities from going green. I was so pleased to see Joe Biden in his speech to the American people in the Democratic Convention last week, where he said climate change is not just an enormous problem for humanity, but it's a fantastic opportunity for a greener, cleaner, better future for us all. So we need the change of thinking of political leaders. And secondly, we need the push from the people who say we cannot live this way any longer. We want change. We want the political leaders to lead us through that change. And we want to support that. And I think COVID-19 has showed the world that when political leaders are brave and take the lead, people are ready to follow and they're ready to push. So I'm quite optimistic that we will be able to make this with this combination of technology and money from business with political leadership. What we particularly need to avoid is the polarization where some people are opposing environment shifts for no real reasons. Look to the United States of America again, where the environment debate has been polarized in a completely meaningless way. The Republican Party in the US historically was a party of the Green. It was Richard Nixon who started the Environment Protection Agency. It was Father Bush who started or really cleaned up industrial pollution. It was Ronald Reagan who signed the Montreal Protocol. So historically, the Republican Party has been a force for green in many ways. Now they're blocking everything just for partisan reasons. And these in every nation we need to avoid. We had the yellow vests in France, and we need political leaders who are brave, but to also create unity behind the shift we need.
Mr. Solheim, you've been to India many times and you've participated in the announcements on climate and conventions and conferences that the Indian government has announced. Um, are you encouraged by the Indian government's climate commitments, and how do you think India can take it forward? What more can be done?
I'm very encouraged with what I see in India these days. I pay tribute to Prime Minister Modi, which I believe has shifted the Indian debate. Whenever I visited India in the past, the debate was, do we want to develop or do we want to take care of Mother Earth? And then surprisingly, nearly everyone wanted to develop. That old-fashioned debate is shifted. We are now into the debate as to how can we create jobs and prosperity at the same time. And I think we are now in a situation for green optimism because we have so many win-win solutions which are good for economy and jobs and good for the environment at the same time. And Prime Minister Modi has promoted that. That's also at the end down to price. Price of solar energy is now lower than coal, basically everywhere in the world. India has the lowest price of solar energy in any nation anywhere, and you see a huge amount of really big solar plants being started, mainly in southern India, in states like Karnataka or Tamil Nadu. But also Madhya Pradesh will be a major center for solar energy and supply solar energy to the metro in New Delhi even. So central and southern India is moving very, very fast, and I believe all of India can do the same. The reason for optimism is also to look to the wider picture of the world. I mean, we are into this mess of pollution because of the events which happened in the United Kingdom in the 1780s, which is called Industrial Revolution. Of course, that was an enormous benefit for humanity because before that, in every nation, nearly all people were poor. Life expectancy was below 30 at every continent on the world. And then all of a sudden, rapid positive change happened, first in Europe, then in America, then in Japan, Korea, China, and India, of course, is now in the midst of this transformation into a modern society. It's an enormous force for good. But it came with a high price, and that price was the heavy pollution and destruction of Mother Earth. Now we are at a point where this is not needed any longer. It's true that in the past, some environment destruction was needed if you wanted to develop, because you had to base your industrial development on coal because it was by far the cheapest source of energy. Now we have all the technologies we need to make people prosper, to bring every Indian out of poverty, to create numerous jobs, but doing it by solar and wind and all the renewables, by providing electrical mobility in the cities, by green tourism, and so many other sectors.
Right. So I understand from your answer that countries have to take environment, economy, and employment into account for any sustainable environment policy. Now, are you able to dispel concerns, especially in the context of developing countries like India, about job losses when a green transition takes place?
Absolutely, and because of this win-win perspective, in most sectors, maybe in nearly all sectors, you can go green and provide more, not less jobs. Look to United States of America, where the president is still speaking as if the jobs are in coal. They have 5 times more jobs in America in solar than in coal. So not only going solar is good for Mother Earth, but it's also good for prosperity and jobs. So it's a transformation we need. In India, the price of new installed solar is much less than the price of coal. Why would you then go into coal when it's better uh, for the state budget, better for the economy of the people, and better for job creation if you go into solar? Where India, of course, still has a job to do is to make sure that more of this production is happening in India itself. China is, of course, dominating global markets for solar, for wind, also for coal, but in many other areas. And China has provided a lot of cheap technologies which the world desperately needs. But of course, India also needs to provide jobs jobs for Indians. So I'm encouraged with all the development in major companies like, say, Tata or Mahindra or Reliance or other companies, where they look into how they can create jobs for Indians by going green. Tourism is another sector. India has an enormous amount of culture sites, and of course, natural sites. The beauty of India is incredible and beaten by no one. And the heritage of India is also incredible and beaten by no one. So India can expect a lot of tourists to come, Indian tourists going around in their own country, but of course, millions of people coming from abroad. Again, that can be a source of the environment transformation you need. For instance, revenues gained from tourism being used to uphold and increase the tiger population or other wildlife, because you get the money where people around national parks or in vulnerable areas see economic benefit from taking better care of the environment. So I'm really optimistic that India can show the world that the way to development, which was first done in Europe and America, then in Japan and China, can be very different. You can from a much earlier stage combine environment with development. There's no choice to be made. You say yes, thank you, both.
That's a wonderful and insightful way of a path of guiding a path on how India can go about its green development. And so, when I talk of green development at this point in time, almost all countries, including India, are rolling out stimulus packages to revive their economies from the onslaught of COVID-19 related lockdowns. And the last time I think we had these stimulus packages was back in 2007-8 recession. And I think all the green development that we are seeing is because of the green component that stimulus packages had then. And do you see that these financial packages as something of a historical event that could be used to allocate public funds to accelerate green development in India? Do you have any ideas how India can do it?
Absolutely, this enormous crisis of COVID-19 is such a big crisis. It should not go to waste. We should, in the language of the United Nations, build back better, provide a better society after the crisis. If you want to put up a historical front runner in that regard, I think South Korea could be emulated. They they were the country which put the most emphasis on green development as the way out of the financial crisis. And not surprisingly, South Korea became one of the biggest success stories in the world. If you take the last 50 years experience, hardly any country has done better than South Korea. They were dirt poor in the 1950s. Now they are one of the richest and most developed and most socially responsible country in the world, and also going green in a major way. That's what we should do globally. European Union is doing a lot of the same now. They have devised a Green New Deal as the way out of the crisis, putting levies on plastics and trying to create a circular economy, rapidly promoting hydrogen as an industrial answer to pollution, promoting battery technologies, forcing the car industry to move much faster into electrical vehicles, and promoting solar and wind industries. Germany has set a final date for phasing out coal. France and the United Kingdom will phase out coal in the next couple of years or very few years. Other nations like Sweden, Denmark, Austria have already done the job. They have phased out coal. So yes, Europe, South Korea are front runners. India can do a lot of the same. When you make, I mean, the states have been strengthened by the crisis, because in every nation, the role of the state has been critical to fight COVID-19. Business and citizens and NGOs can help, but the state is now very strong everywhere, and business demands support from the state. That support should be given, but it should be given in such a way that you uh, go for green. For example, if you want to support the airlines, which may be needed because I mean they are all basically on the verge of being bankrupt everywhere in the world because of the collapse in air traffic. Well, do like France has done. Tell the airlines that yes, we are ready to support you, but on certain conditions, like you scrap unnecessary flights, which can be done by rail, and you design your company in a way which is better suited for the Paris target. We will, if we get it right, we will see a very fast development also of electric flights. Of course, not the biggest ones, but for regional flights, for smaller flights, small aircraft, they can go electric, but they need encouragement and support from the state. So governments should use this enormous opportunity to get it right by providing the money for the change, but also by making the demands to business that if you want to get subsidies from us, well, you will get them, but you go green.
Okay. So you spoke a bit about behavioral change, and I want you to speak more about it because the most enduring image during the pandemic lockdowns have been that of clean air, blue skies everywhere in the polluted cities in the world. And it's because economic activities have come to a halt. And things like no office traffics in the morning ensures less pollution, especially in a city like Delhi, which is, which has a bad reputation about bad air. And so this is a case of behavioral change leading to environment friendly outcomes. Now, I want to understand from you how important are policies to change consumer behavior towards climate, and what would some of them be, especially in India? And if there are any examples from Norway, probably, which can be customized for India.
First of all, of course, the corona pandemic has shown us how beautiful Mother Earth is and how wildlife can research in spectacular ways. We have seen penguins walking down the streets of Cape Town. We have seen bears coming into cities in Europe. In the United States, people are speaking about the party of wildlife in the great national parks. Of course, in India, we have seen the air in Delhi becoming much cleaner. People in Punjab, for the first time in 20 or 30 years, they could see the Himalayas from the great cities of Punjab. So people have seen the benefits of this, and they will demand to keep it like that. I mean, obviously, we all understand that when economy researches, you will lose some of these benefits, but we should keep as many of them as possible. When China hosted the Olympics in 2008, they closed down all coal in Beijing, and the city was very clean for that few weeks. Same happened in Shanghai when they had the expo in 2010. That had a very important long-term effect because people could see, yes, it's so clean, it's so nice. You want to keep it like that. And then they started putting pressure on the political leaders for change. And now, of course, pollution has come down in Chinese cities dramatically. It's more than halved in the great cities of China. So, of course, the same can happen in India. We have seen the enormous benefits of clean air in Delhi, and we should find ways of reducing both pollution from coal, from agriculture burning, and from traffic, and all that is feasible. Let me point to one great example from Norway for what we really got right, and that was the policies on electrical vehicles. We have the highest penetration of electrical vehicles now anywhere in the world. About 50% of all new cars bought in Norway are purely electric. How did that happen? Well, the government came together and we discussed how can we promote a rapid change into electric mobility. And we decided you need to make the customers an offer. But that's what every shopkeeper, every supermarket in the world is doing. If you want to introduce a new product, well, you make an introductory offer. You make it a little bit cheaper or more tasty or more valuable to the customer. So how can we do that? In two ways. We changed the tax level between electric vehicles and combustible vehicles in the favor of electrical vehicles. It was not a subsidy as such, just to change the balance between the two so that electrical vehicles became cheaper comparable to the combustible. By the way, electrical vehicles are now everywhere in the world more cheap to run over the lifespan of the car, but the upfront cost in some cases is higher, so people stay away for that reason, even if they would make money in the long run. So we changed the balance for payment, and we said if you buy an electrical vehicle, you will get certain privileges on related to parking, related to lower price if you go into a ferry or a tunnel where you pay, and related to the ability to go in bus lanes so you can go faster into town in the morning. All this has worked, I would say, more or less perfectly, and we now have seen a huge increase in demand for electrical vehicles. And none of these things are rocket science. Everything can be can be done by basically any nation in the world. And remind yourself that through the lifespan of the car, it's cheaper to go electric. The new electrical vehicles, I mean, a middle-sized family car like say Hyundai Kona can make 500 kilometers in one charge. This is the Korean car. So there is an enormous opportunity now to move into this. And I'm pleased to see a number of Indian cities ordering electrical buses. Delhi has done it, Kolkata, Ahmedabad, Mumbai for sure. A number of Indian cities are ordering electrical buses. And of course, there is also attempts to make autos who run on electricity and cars. So I'm confident. Delhi just came out with an electrical vehicle policy, which will spur the purchase of electrical cars in Delhi. So in the next few years, we will see a rapid change also in India into electric mobility. China, while Norway is the biggest per capita, China is by far the biggest in electrical mobility as a nation. The southern Chinese city of Shenzhen, there is 16,000 electric buses just in that one city, and 24,000 electric taxis in just one city. That's much more than Europe and North America and India combined. So let's take the examples of Norway and China, and India can for sure move very fast into electrical mobility. This is the relationship between government policies and customers' behavior.
Right.
If government make the right shifts, people will change their behavior. But also, if people start changing their behavior, that will influence the decisions of government. So it's both ways. It's a two-way street.
Yeah, that's a very insightful example and a very insightful answer to my question for all our viewers. And so, my last question to you here is if you could please elaborate on the role of taxation in achieving climate goals. This is to say that taxing polluters and using those funds to subsidize green development. And where do you see those opportunities for a country like India?
I think taxes are absolutely key to the green development. Taxes should be set, green taxes should be set in a dialogue between government and business. Because yes, you need government regulations for business to behave well, but also business is closer to the problem, understanding markets better, and they may also understand better what taxations will work. So that dialogue is critical, and basically all governments in the world should sit down with key businesses in their land and ask how can we shift taxes so that we move green. At the end of the day, no vehicle for economic transformation is bigger than if you can change the profit calculation. If you can make it more profitable to go green, people will rush in the green direction. That's how nations did in the past. They subsidized fossil fuels to get in business into that. They subsidized automobile production to get business into it. Now we should use the tax system as the vehicle for the green transformation. If you allow one Norwegian example for how we also got this right, that was when we started to fight NOx emissions in Norway. But 10 years back, we realized that we were far behind schedule on NOx emissions, also far behind many other nations and far behind the commitments Norway had done internationally on NOx emissions. Well, what to do? Some people say you just put a levy on NOx. Then others said, no, that won't work because then people will go out of business in the fishing fleet and in the ferries, and a lot of shipping companies will have huge difficulties. So rather than just make a flat taxation on NOx, we sat down with business and we designed a system where there is a levy on NOx emissions, that every single kroner or rupee or dollar coming from that is going into the technological shift into more modern equipment. So business is paying, but they're also getting back. And the faster a company change, the more it gains because then it pay less and get more. If you want to sit in the back seat, well, then you pay more and get less. And this has worked remarkably. Norway is now for sure the world leader when it comes to electrical ferries. As you may know, we have n number of fjords in Norway, and people cross these fjords by ferries, and many of them are car ferries. And these ferries are now rapidly going into electric ferries because of this government policy. So I believe taxation is an absolute key, and every nation should aim at making it profitable to go green. There is nothing wrong in business making money from going green. What is really wrong is if you can have a profit destroying Mother Earth or destroying human life or killing people or that's wrong. But to have a profit making the world a better place for people is just fine. Taxation can achieve that.
Okay, so we've come to the end of our frontrunner talk. Mr. Solheim, like always, it's delightful, absolutely enlightening to speak with you, to hear you. Every time I've heard you in India or I've heard you speak live at big conferences, it's always been very instructive and very enlightening. And I'm sure that our viewers will also find this opportunity to hear you answer these questions for all of us really delightful. Thank you so much for taking out time and being here to share your expertise. Thank you so much, Mr. Solheim.
Thank you so much, and a big hello to all my Indian friends. Thank you so much.
Thank you.